All right, Craig, how are you?
Good.
Thank you for
How are
coming.
you? Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So it's the first ever podcast with a guest.
Right.
So you're the lucky number one.
Good, good, good.
So let's start this off with a little bit of background on yourself for our viewers who might not know.
Yeah, you betcha. So, Craig Parry, I'm the chairman of Inventa Capital, chairman of a number of publicly listed companies, primarily in the mining space. I'm a geologist by background, grew up in a tiny little country town in northern New South Wales, studied geology, joined Rio Tinto, spent 8 years with Rio Tinto looking around the world for tier one ore bodies for Rio. And then went out I worked very briefly for a company called Oxiana, and Owen Hegarty is one of the legends of Aussie mining, sort of took me under his wing, and we started a group of companies with another fella called Tony Manini, who's a very successful Aussie mining entrepreneur, called the Tigers Realm group of companies. And then I moved to Canada back in 2016 and just continued on with that trajectory. I think I've got 26 companies now, 12 of them are publicly listed, 2 are New York Stock Exchange listed, and it's a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah, I bet. Holy. So let's kind of go back there. So you studied geology in university, correct?
I did. Took me a few sort of fits and starts to get there, but I ended up, I wanted to make some money as a young bloke because I've always been a bit entrepreneurial, and back in the early 90s I thought, well, I want to go to China and start a jeans retailer of all things.
Yeah.
So my father recommended I go to Kalgoorlie and work on drill rigs and explore for gold over there. So I did that, made a bit of money, and then but I fell in love with geology and rocks, and more than anything, exploration is what gets me going. It's pretty exciting to make a discovery. So that's the addiction.
Yeah. So you were working on the rigs, the drill rigs.
Yep. More
That's
sort of
pretty
sampling
tough.
of things.
It's tough work.
It was tough work. Yeah. Doing all sorts of things, taking soil samples.
Yeah.
The most lucrative thing I did was doing mag surveys. Used to walk anywhere up to 35 kilometres a day and get paid per line kilometre, and that was pretty hard work but lucrative. Saw a lot of never got bitten by a snake, so that was good.
That's awesome. So after you got your degree in geology, you applied for Rio Tinto and started working there?
I did. Yeah, very fortunate. I think I was the only person globally. That was in '99 that Rio Tinto took. There was a major downturn in metal prices from about '96 to '99, and I was the only person that Rio Tinto took onto a Rio Tinto exploration in 1999. So very, very fortunate. Wonderful place to sort of cut your teeth, learn about exploration, the exploration process, and the different types of deposits and rocks and how you go about exploring for those deposits. I spent 2 years in Western Australia looking for diamonds and iron ore.
Diamonds, eh?
Diamonds, yeah. That's an interesting business. That's a fascinating business. This is a tough business, really bloody tough, but really interesting interesting geology. But and then they moved me to Chile, so I lived in Antofagasta in the Atacama Desert and learned about porphyry copper exploration. And then they sent me to China and I worked in China for a couple of years, looking for porphyries that we'd taken an interest in that time in Oyu Tolgoi, which Robert Friedland, of course, and his team, Doug Kerwin, had discovered, and so they wanted me to go and sort of look for those style of deposits along that Tethyan belt, particularly in China. And then that led into a global role. I was sort of head of project generation for iron ore exploration globally for a while, and did a little bit in uranium as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which that sort of got me started in some of the things that I've been involved in over here. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, we'll get into that. So you had the technical background of geology and stuff like that, exploration, leaving Rio Tinto. How did you kind of develop the skills necessary to be successful in the capital markets financial aspect side?
Yeah. And that's it's a great question, because that's the sort of the mystical part of the business in a way, and it's the hardest thing to get exposure to. I was very fortunate. When I left Rio, I joined Oxiana, as I say, briefly for, I think I was there for about 7 months before I left with the founder, Owen Hegarty. I wanted to take an Oxiana, from a 6 million market cap to a 6 billion market cap when we merged with Zinifex back in 2008. So he was a tremendously successful and wonderful bloke. And he really sort of showed me the ropes on that front. I wasn't long out of a tent and jeans looking for deposits, and next thing you know, I was sort of up and down the main streets of the big cities of the world looking for capital. So I got a
whole other game.
Well, Owen was also the vice chairman of Fortescue at that stage, which is now I think the third or fourth biggest mining company in the world. So I got really good exposure to how you speak to bankers, fund managers, and the like. So it was a bit of an accelerated apprenticeship. I even remember, we when he was on the board there, he'd get me to look at things and try and assist with some of the stuff that Fortescue was doing. So I got a full spectrum of corporate education over a few years of sharing an office with Owen.
That's awesome. So what was sort of the first deal you ran, and maybe walk me through that life cycle there, where you were kind of in charge, you had to pick the team, pick the project, raise the capital, so to speak.
Yeah, so testing my memory banks here, not too hard really, but the very first deal I did, when we started the Tigers Realm Group, I think we ended up with 6 or 7 companies. One of them, of course, was Next Gen Energy, so we seeded that up and got that going. But my baby there, I had a bee in my bonnet about coking coal back then. Coking coal prices, of course, it's proven, the thesis is proven right. Coking coal prices have gone through an extraordinary run in the last few years. So I was very fortunate. I recruited a fellow who was the head of exploration for coking coal from BHP, a guy called Mike Friedrich, and we started Tigers Realm Coal. We started Tigers Realm Group and raised $10 million very easily back in about 2008-9, despite the sort of tricky, you were tied up in the global financial crisis. And then set about. I'd heard that Rio Tinto was actually pulling out of a project that I'd looked at in Colombia, a good-looking coking coal project. So I as soon as I heard that was available, I jumped on a plane and spent the next year in Colombia trying to pin that project down. That went well. We got that. We discovered a lot of tons there. Unfortunately, it was the seams are a bit thin to mine, so it's never properly produced, that one. But in the process, Mike Friedrich from BHP took me to Far Eastern Russia, and I bought a project called the Imam Coal Project, which was a few billion tons of coking coal. And that was a wild ride. We started the company late 2009, early 2010. I bought both of those projects. We made a discovery just north of the Imam project that turned into a world-class coking coal project. And I think we went from, mid-2010, we'd raised about $20 million. I was sort of getting used to sitting on, as Owen likes to say, I lived in seat 23B at that stage, flying around the world looking for capital. We raised $20 million for that company at a valuation of about $50 million. We listed it 12 months later on the ASX at a valuation, I think from memory, of about $300 million. We raised $50 million. So that was a tremendous outcome. That mine, we set about drilling it out, exploring and then developing, and now it's in production. It's doing about 1 million tonnes of quality coking coal a year. Unfortunately, it became very hard to operate in Russia around 2014 and 15 with that first Ukrainian situation. But in that process, I think I raised $187 million to build that project. Some of that came from the Russian government, and a private equity fund, a US private equity fund that was based in Russia, probably a bunch of CIA spies. Yeah. So it was an interesting time. I got to know Putin personally. I had dinner with Mr. Putin and Ivan Glassenberg and Jack Ma at one stage. And
so you had dinner with Putin?
Yeah, fabulous experience. Wow. Interesting man.
Yeah.
Much derided now, of course, probably rightly so. But Mr. Putin was very good to me. He's one of his funds that he'd established to encourage foreign investment gave us about $20 million, the Russian Direct Investment Fund. And, he was very supportive. A lot of what you hear about Russia, I think, oligarchs stealing things, is just made up, load of rubbish. Out at our project, we advanced Imam north from discovery to production in 3 years. I think I'm the only foreigner that's ever bought a deep sea port in Russia, just next door to the deposit, and that's still, we still own that. That's still in operation. I'm no longer involved in the company, unfortunately. It was a pretty bloody painful process for over 5 years trying to explore and build a mine in Russia and raise money for it. But it was a very fulfilling experience. Very proud that we got it into production. And it's now doing what we said it would do.
Yeah. Were you nervous meeting Putin for the first time?
Yep. Although,
shaking a bit?
Although he was 2 hours late for dinner. Well, firstly, before that happened, this was at their St. Petersburg Economic Forum, which is like their sort of Russia's version of Davos. So you typically have, Bill Gates and all of those sorts of lots of politicians there. And I got a call up to the security desk, and I thought, oh no, what have I done wrong? And it was an invitation. Mr. Putin would like you to join him for dinner. And then he was 2 hours late for dinner, but I was in a holding pen having cocktails with Ivan Glassenberg, Jack Ma, the chairwoman of Nokia.
Oh, wow.
It was a fabulous experience, and Ivan and I hit it off. Talking about iron ore and how he'd launched a bid for Rio Tinto a few years before and his plans, and he was fascinating to talk to. So that allayed my fears a little bit. But I did at one point sort of have to ask Mr. Putin a question, and that was pretty funny.
Yeah. What was the question?
I sort of thanked him for his investment in our company, and then. And I just wanted to highlight that, I thought that he was doing a good job in encouraging small companies like ours to invest and develop things in Far Eastern Russia. And then I simply said, Mr. Putin, we're going to the Vladivostok Economic Forum next month. We'd love it if you'd swing by the booth. And so there were a few sort of grizzled old gentlemen. I think the chairman of Total was there sort of staring down his nose at me, thinking, who's this bloody whippersnapper from Australia?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, so it sounds like you gained a wealth of experience through that time. Going forward here, what kind of motivated you to get the idea to start Inventa Capital?
So I suppose Tiger's Realm was a little bit of a precursor. Unfortunately, timing's everything. In particular in a cyclical industry like the mining sector, and we very much got caught up and beaten up by the cycle. Come 2013, things had sort of fallen apart. Metal prices were down. Interest in the sector was horrible. So that hadn't sort of become a very, very tough time, of course. We were, despite all of that, very fortunate because one of the companies we'd started, we probably had two key successes that we started out of that group, and that was EMR Capital, which is now, I think, the second biggest private equity firm in mining. I'm still a general partner there. We've got $2.7 billion of funds under management, about $7 billion of assets. So that was a success. But the thing that I was most passionate about, the roaring success we had there, was starting Next Gen Energy. Yeah. So Lee Courier, Chris McFadden, and I got that off the ground, and a geologist, Andy Brown, who's a fantastic guy, and that was amazing. So that brought me to Canada. I moved over to lead a spin-out called ISO Energy. We made another discovery there at the Hurricane deposit. So uranium's been very good to me and my family, as has Canada. And during that time, I got to know Mike Konnert, and we did a little deal together. I love telling this story, and this is the genesis for Inventa Capital. It's my favourite mining story. Mike's, I've been very, very fortunate. I think I've been involved in, companies I've started have made 5 world-class discoveries. NextGen's Arrow, of course, I think it's a tier 1 discovery. I think it's well on its way to being the greatest uranium mine ever built. Lee and the team doing a fabulous job. But the best discovery I've made is a young bloke called Michael Konnert, who's my business partner and the CEO of Inventa Capital and Vizsla Silver. Well, I got to know him through a mutual friend back in about 2016. He was a little bit down on his luck at that time. He'd sort of tried to do a deal on a gold project in the Yukon. He came to me for advice, and I said, "Well, look, I don't have much time to talk about it, but have a think about what project ideas and commodities you like." We went and sat down on in the Cactus Club here in Bental on Burrard, 4:00 in the afternoon. I said,
Classic spot.
Classic spot.
Yeah.
Half the world's Canada's mining deals get done on that patio. And I said, well, okay, so what have you got? And he said, well, I really like cobalt. I said, I like cobalt too. Have you got any project ideas? And most people, when they've sort of come to you, they don't, rarely do they bring something concrete and something that you go, okay, I can go in on this. Mike had it all laid out, and I said, well, he outlined a thing that it's north of Pemberton, actually, north of Whistler there, called the Little Gem cobalt gold deposit. I said, well, how do we get hold of that? And he said, well, we've got to stake all the ground around it first, and then we'll go and try and buy the deposit itself. I said, okay, well, how do we stake the ground, and how long is that going to take? And he said, about $7,000, and I can do it right now if I had $7,000. So I gave him my credit card, and before I'd finished that beer, he'd staked all the ground around the deposit. I gave him another $130,000 or $140,000 a few months later. We negotiated with the owners of the deposit, brought that in. So I think we'd outlaid about $200,000, and then we sold that company within 12 months for $15 million.
Wow!
So he made me $5 million in about sort of 7 or 8 months, purely on a punt. It was just remarkable. I thought, well, this fella's a force of nature.
Yeah, that's a good business partner right there.
Tremendous. He's been doing it ever since.
Yeah.
He's doing a fabulous job on Vizsla Silver. Yeah.
So you partnered up with him for Inventa Capital, and you knew right away he was a go-getter after that beer.
Oh, yep. Force of nature.
And then you sort of put together your team and put together the business model and what you guys were going to do going forward.
Yeah, we have. It's probably, as I say, I think we've got 26 companies now. They're fairly diverse, but primarily in mining. We do have a couple of green energy companies, Neo Green Hydrogen, Vita Carbon, which I think is a bit of a, best-in-class carbon business. But for the most part, for a long time we were opportunity driven. If we saw a project or a property or an idea that we liked, we'd go after them. I must say, I've got other mates. I'm very fortunate to be involved in a company called Skeena Resources. We've got the SK Creek project. I was chairman until recently. Now I'm lead director. But my partner on that one, Walt Coles, is always like, Craig, why do you do this so much? Why have you got so many companies and projects? Yeah. And I've thought a lot about that over the years, and I've decided it's just an addiction. I love it. Making a discovery, there's nothing quite like it. It makes it's better than sex.
It's true.
Although, as Owen would say, if you think that, you're probably not doing it right. But anyway, so, a little bit opportunistic, an opportunity and deal-driven, bit of a deal junkie. I know I need to stop doing that and be a bit more focused, and so we've sort of, we've got quite a few gold companies. All of our companies, I should say, the thing that sets them apart from a lot of things is that they have a resource base. There's value in the ground. There's metal already in the ground on these projects. So there's always going to be value, but, some of the companies have been beaten up pretty thoroughly in recent times.
Everyone's been beaten up a bit.
That's true. That's true. So I'm not too worried about that. But we certainly do have some tidying up to do and making some of these companies work and looking to sell projects where we can and the like. But going forward, we're much more focused, like most people these days, on the battery metal space. We really want to put our foot on quality resources that come this next cycle will get built, and particularly things like silver, copper, nickel, that are crucial to this sort of energy transition that we're going through.
Yeah, so I saw you guys have started up a new company called Targa Exploration, which is a lithium co.
Yep.
And you guys bought a couple properties off of Zach Flood in Manitoba, right?
That's right, yep.
And then Sean Ryan, and that's in Ontario. So
exactly, and Quebec. Yep.
And Quebec.
Yep.
Near the James Bay region. Maybe you can talk about sort of Targa and what's your guys' game plan for that?
Yeah, Targa, okay, so that's an interesting one. It's not sort of fully down the fairway for us in that it is there's no existing resource
Yeah,
base.
it's early days.
Early days,
Yeah.
super early stage stuff, generative type work that Sean, Zach, Steve Blower, who has been with me for years now. Steve's one of the world's great explorers, found a number of uranium deposits. So we're taking it from very early stages. There's a lot of smoke on these properties. There's been a big staking rush, particularly in Quebec in recent years. I think Quebec's shaping up to be the Saudi Arabia of lithium and spodumene. So we've placed a lot of bets out there. It's early stage. You'd love to have a resource base. I do know that some of our properties have spodumene on them, though, so that's a good start. And I was talking to our chief geologist. We're very fortunate to bring a fella on board who's just finished his PhD in lithium exploration, and he's very impressed with some of these properties we've got. So we're doing some field work now. I don't think we'll be in a position to drill until next season, but I think we'll get ourselves. We'll do all of the grassroots work over the next 6 to 12 months, and then be ready to drill come the next summer.
Awesome. No, that sounds very interesting. Kind of switching topics here. When you had your first success, what was that like, and how did you celebrate? Like, how did it feel making that first discovery?
Well, the first one I was involved with, it was just a serendipitous thing. I was in a helicopter in the Pilbara, and I was the first guy out of the helicopter to take a sample on an outcrop that became a thing called Wealth under Thaluna. The 50 million tonnes of super high quality microplaty hematite, the best kind of iron ore on the planet. I was involved. I was on the team that discovered it, but the guy who really discovered it was a fellow called Hilke Dalstra. There's a story in here, I suppose, about the difference between discovering something for yourself and your own companies and discovering it for a big company like Rio Tinto. Hilke's one of the great unsung heroes of exploration globally. He's genius level smart. I think he's discovered over 10 or 15 billion tonnes of iron ore, including the things that make up Fortescue. He's been responsible for that. There's probably like $2 trillion of metal he's discovered. No one's ever heard of him. He still works for Rio Tinto. I think they gave him a $120,000 bonus that year for making that discovery. So you're very excited, and you celebrate pretty heartily, of course, when you do that. But not like when you make a discovery yourself. And I suppose, I can very distinctly remember exactly where I was standing at a winery of all places in Melbourne when Lee Courier rang me on a Sunday afternoon to say I think we'd drilled. It was about the 12th hole on the Arrow deposit. At that stage, it was just a target. It was sort of 20 metres at 10% uranium. I went straight into my wife, who was at the dining table. I'd left her just to take this call because I knew I had to hear the news, and bought the most expensive bottle of champagne you could find and celebrated. It was an extraordinary experience.
No, it's definitely a different feeling, especially making your own shareholders a bunch of money too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, do you invest in anything besides junior mining deals, or like how do you kind of organize your personal portfolio?
Well, I can tell you I'm a terrible investor in mining, and even worse at everything else I do. Look, I suppose, these days I'm constantly writing checks for our own companies. I really stand behind everything that we do there. I think I put, in the past 2 years, I've put $7 million of my wife and my own capital into Vizsla Silver. So they're the chunky things that we do. I've done a little bit of property development myself, particularly when I was back at Rio Tinto and had the time to do it. I don't really have the time to do it now, but have bought property. We had a couple of houses in Australia and got a place in Whistler and a place here. So I've sort of tried to take. There's a fella here in Vancouver called Ian Rosier who likes to say that the business is option rock, make paper, sell paper, buy rock. And I know he's got one of the nicest houses on the waterfront over in West Van. So that's a good way to go. Although, I've been selling our places in Australia because the tax benefits of owning a property nowadays over there at least are just terrible. I'd much rather have it in the market here. So I really, property is the only thing that I've sort of invested in outside of mining pretty much. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. If you could change anything about the industry that we're in, what would it be and why?
Yeah, this might sound a bit harsh, but I'd love to, it needs a clean out. The fly-by-nighters, guys who just have lifestyle companies,
paper pushers,
those sorts of. It's already such a high-risk, tricky business, and one that investors rightly should be cautious of. But then you throw into the mix people who are simply there to mine the market, vultures, and it makes us all look bad. It brings us all down. I'd love to see that disappear somehow. Yeah.
Do you think it ever will?
No, I doubt it. I think it's always been the way, hasn't it? What's Mark Twain define a mine as? A hole in the ground with a liar standing next to it. So it's always been that way, but unfortunately.
Awesome. Well, let's kind of end this off here with some rapid fire questions if you're up for it.
Righto.
Awesome. Okay, so favorite stock right now that isn't your own deal?
I really like Forum
Forum?
Energy. Yeah, okay. I think they're onto a pretty significant uranium discovery up in the Ceylon Basin.
Awesome. One mentor you'd like to shout out, and how did they help you get to where you are today?
I'll shout out Owen Hegarty, of course, but Tony Manini as well. Tony's been just so wonderful to me, and really showed me the ropes and sort of managing companies, the corporate aspect, and also that financing aspect. They've just been crucial to my career.
Mm-hmm. Greatest return you've ever made on a penny stock or junior mining stock? Can be percentage.
Jeepers.
Biggest win, I guess.
Next gen's got to be up there. I bought a hell of a lot of ISO Energy at around 25 cents, and that went to $5 or $6. Mm-hmm. So that was not bad. I did something personally there a bunch of years ago. I just mentioned that I started something called the Vancouver Mining Collective, and we had our first luncheon yesterday, and one of our speakers was Clive Johnson. Clive helped me out. I bought, all of the options of a company called Papillon that had the Fekola deposit for 3 cents and sold that for, about 60 cents. So that was a good win.
Awesome.
Yeah, still looking for that 100 bag. Although Visa Silver, I should say,
or Target.
Yeah. Well, Visa Silver is probably the one. What am I saying? We've taken that from 2 cents to, all the way up to $3.50. It's now cheap as anything. Yeah.
This is a good one. The worst financial decision you've ever made?
Splitting up with my wife.
That's good.
Outside of that, probably our house in Melbourne, just sitting on that and then losing the capital gains tax window, so that now I've got to pay 50% tax on that when I finally bring the money back.
Yeah, that stings.
Yeah.
Favorite beer?
I love Modelo at the moment. Love Mexico. We're Mexico files. We our project's down there in Sinaloa, so and those Modelos are very good, particularly the dark one.
Yeah. Favorite bar in the city in Vancouver? Like restaurant, bar?
Where do I go mostly?
Where can people find you and pitch you?
Oh, look, I'm always in Coast because it's right next door to the office. I like the Pack Rim lobby, of course. You always see classic usual Michigan. Joey's is always fun. That's a good place. But my favourite bar in the world is at QCL, Queen Charlotte Lodge, which is owned by my mate Len Clough's dad. The Bell Ringer Bar, fabulous scene. Down on the water, floating dock, all these, sports fishing boats coming in and unloading fish and drinking Caesars there is one of the best things you could ever do in your life.
That's awesome. If you had to work in any other industry besides this one, what would it be?
Porn.
Awesome.
No, look, property development. Gee, a big part of me wishes that I'd sort of taken that a bit more seriously over the years. It's certainly, one of the best places to make money.
That's for sure. Yeah. Favorite car?
McLaren P1. McLaren F1. I'd love to own one of those one day. Big McLaren fan. I've owned a few of them now. I've got a 765 at the moment.
Oh,
that's a beauty. Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
You got to take me for a spin sometime.
You betcha. It's a driver's car.
Well, thank you, Craig. Appreciate you coming on. Yeah, great chat. And where can people find you?
If you check out our website, inventacapital.ca, you'll see everything, all the contact details and everything you need to know there. Well, you know, hopefully some of your viewers and listeners will be at some of these conferences coming up. So we've got a big team going to Beaver Creek next week. We'll be at the New Orleans conference, Brian Lundine's conference there. Various conferences around here as well. We love supporting the Metals Investor Forum. We think that those guys do a great job. Yeah.
Maybe you can shout out your new thing you have going on with the luncheon.
Oh yeah, the Vancouver Mining Collective. If you Google Vancouver Mining Collective, we've set that up. It's a copy really of the Melbourne Mining Club. It's an altruistic, charitable foundation trying to bring people together. Senior leaders of the industry, future leaders of the industry, students, First Nations groups, government. We want it to be the premier networking event for the province. Every 2 to 3 months we'll have an event. This time we had George Brack, who's the chairman of Capstone and Wheaton Precious Metals speak, and Clive Johnson, the CEO and founder of B2 Gold. I'm hopeful that we'll get Jonathan Price, who's the CEO of Teck, to come along. Yesterday's event was just a fabulous way to kick off. We had 200 people there. It was a who's who of mining in the province, and I'm very very excited for the future. That seems to have won people's imaginations and thought and support. So, Vancouver Mining Collective.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure, Craig. Thank you.
Good on you, Adam. A real pleasure, mate.
You come from a land down under.